So what is up, you guys? We are back with another workshop. This one is going to be building off of the freeze to power relation workshop. If you have not checked it out, check it out on my YouTube page, freeze to power relation. I made a whole Excel document, and actually it's up here because we'll be using it today. So this is what it looks like. This is an example of what it looks like. We'll be using this today. I know it's really hard to see, some of you won't be able to see it, but I'll read out the freezes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can full screen it, and hopefully you can see it. But yeah, basically this workshop I'm going to be demonstrating the freeze to power relation. So basically everything in here I'm going to be demonstrating, and hopefully you guys can follow along. I won't be going too far into the weeds on like the specifics. I'll just be demonstrating the relation between freezes and power, and how you can utilize these freezes to not only practice power at home in a small space, but also to learn different power moves. So doing a sequence of freezes in order to get a power move doesn't mean you'll necessarily get the power move, because you have to add momentum and power and kick and all that stuff. But at least one of the elements is getting at least in the positions for the power move. So we'll basically be applying our stacks and combos from the stream and converting them into power moves essentially, or at least trying to. So this workshop is pretty much dedicated to those of you guys who have a small space like I do, and like basically like if I lay down, I only have this much space right here, and like I don't have that much space, and it's like the same width-wise. This workshop is dedicated to you guys who have a small space, can't necessarily do a full power round or full power move at home. So basically stacking freezes in the sequence to do power moves, but in a small space. So hopefully this helps you guys working on power moves, or at least maintaining your power in a small space, especially with the quarantine and all that stuff. So for those of you guys with a small space, again, this is dedicated to you. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we made this list right here. And this has basically all the power moves we could have listed. And we'll start with the first one, cricket. And this one is, it says hang glide. The main freeze is hang glide. You don't really need, there's a bunch of supporting freezes. So we're going to be using, I'm going to be demonstrating all these, the main freeze and the supporting freezes, and how they kind of act in all the power moves. I don't know if I'll be doing all the power moves, but hopefully you get the idea of how to practice your power moves, or how to do these freeze, or apply these stacks and combos that we do in the stream in order to get a power move later on. So cricket, pretty self-explanatory. You need hang glide. I'm not going to be doing a tutorial for every single power move, just showing you how it applies. So if you have if you're doing cricket, you're in hang glide right here, and then you'll be pumping up, right? Hang glide, pretty simple. So one move only, right? Same thing with jackhammer, stab. I haven't done jackhammer in a while. Hopping and a hang glide. Same thing with dark hammer. Oh, working on stab switches. Man, those are really bad, but working on stab switches to get dark hammer. So applying stab switches to get dark hammers. Turtles, same thing. Applying stab switches to get turtles. Over here. Same thing. Applying stab switches differently with the rotation. So you'll be needing hang glide for both of those, or for all of those. All right, so let's go down to UFO. And I know a lot of you probably don't even do UFO or consider doing UFO, but I'll go over it real briefly. And then this one's kind of a tricky one. For UFO position, practicing in a small space, there are different ways you can practice it, and not every move on this list you can practice in a small space. Like, I don't think I ever tried doing air tracks here. So UFO may or may not be one, but just working on this tuck planche right here, getting used to being in that position. And I say hang glide right here, just for that cricket spin. So you spin For cricket, you'll spin and pick up to tuck planche. So hang glide, you're in this first sequence, hang glide, picking up to tuck planche. Hang glide, pick up to tuck planche. Or it's kind of like a half planche or something like that. L-sit, you don't really need it for UFO, but you can also practice your L-sit, keep your core tight, and try walking it for another float similar to UFO. Real brief rundown. Those are the pretty like straightforward ones. And then it'll get more interesting once we get to Windmill, which is next. All right, so everything else up until this point has been straightforward. But I guess once we get to this Windmill part, here's the part where I want you guys to start trying to follow along with me. And I think maybe a couple of these, like Windmill, Halo, let's see, Windmill, Halo, maybe shoulder halo, swipes, I don't know. We can have you guys follow along. The other ones will be a little bit more tricky. So we'll just try a few of them and then have you guys follow along. But for Windmill, so everyone knows, you know, Windmill, you start from stab and then you collapse, you do the whole collapse thingy, and then you do your Windmill. But just focusing on the freezes for Windmill, to break it down into just freezes, here's kind of how I would break it down mentally. So on the list we have the main freeze, which is hang glide, and then supporting freeze underneath is shoulder freeze, and then also headstand underneath that. So for right now, I'm just going to be doing hang glide to shoulder. So the three freezes you're going to need for this is hang glide, shoulder, and then the other side shoulder. So the first one is hang glide, the second one is your shoulder on that same side, and then the third freeze is shoulder on the other side. All right. So this isn't necessarily a windmill, but it's a way you can practice your windmills. So let's go from stab and drop down to that same shoulder that you were stabbing with. Keep in mind, you can use your head on the ground. So we're gonna go here, keep your head on the ground, go to shoulder, and then now once you're on this shoulder, switch to your roll over onto your other shoulder. Like this. Now, from your opposite shoulder, switch over to your stab hand, which should be your free hand right here. And that is basically more or less the windmill positions, or at least the positions you'll be on your back doing the windmill. So we're gonna do stab again, to shoulder, to other shoulder, back, and stab. You can't even see it. So again, stab, don't worry about the legs as much, lean on your head, collapse the shoulder, and then switch to the other shoulder, roll on your back, catch, stab. So go ahead and give that a try. Now we can start this sequence from any position. So we have hand glide, shoulder, and then our other shoulder, right? So let's try starting it from our whichever shoulder. Let's try doing it with our shoulder that we stab with first. Okay? So I'm gonna start here on the shoulder freeze. I'm gonna roll over behind me, catch the other shoulder, and then from here, switch over to stab freeze. And this is a way for me to practice my windmills in a very small space. Or those of you guys that are just trying to get windmills who don't have it yet, but you have these three freezes down, this is something you can do to get more familiar with your power move that you want to get. So let's try it with head freeze. So we have headstand at the bottom, and this is mainly for you to use your head in doing head mills, but it still applies to windmill. It's just going to be a little bit trickier. So for this headstand, instead of doing just a regular headstand with our legs off the ground, we're going to do a tripod headstand with our feet on the ground. So it's going to be just like this, like a plank. All right, make sure your hips are like high above you. What you're going to do from here in this headstand position
is lean down to your shoulder, whichever arm you're stabbing with. Go ahead and lean on that shoulder. Lift up your legs, and then switch shoulders. And then from here, once you're in this shoulder freeze, can you see it? Once you're in this shoulder freeze, pick up to head, put your feet on the ground.
And there is a semblance of a windmill with your head on the ground. So try it again. This is going to be windmill with just your head on the ground. It's going to be the tripod position, just like this. You're going to put one shoulder on the ground, lift up your legs, roll to the other shoulder, and then once you're on the other shoulder, put your feet on the ground, lift your head up. And that's going to be using freezes to get familiar with windmills. So we have two different ways to do this. You can do it from hang glide to shoulder, back to hang glide, or you can do headstand to shoulder, back to headstand. I know it's not exactly going to be like a power move per se, but again, this is for if you don't have enough space to do a power move in your own place, or you're trying to be a little bit more discreet when you practice, or if you're just trying to get familiar with the positions. If there's one position, like let's say I'm doing a windmill, my start is good, but I fall too low on my back, or I hit my hips on the ground, working on that opposite shoulder will help me get more familiar with being on this side. So for example, if I do windmill and too low to the ground, my hips are way too low, it's because I'm not high enough on the shoulder, right? So this exercise will help me get used to being on this shoulder. So from stab, if you can collapse with the turn, you can do that. You're gonna switch over and go back to stab. So again, you're gonna stab, shoulder, switch, back to stab. If you want to work up into a bit like more like the power move, you're more than welcome to do that. So let's say you're in this position from freeze and you want to spin down into shoulder, switch, and re-catch it. And then just repeat the same thing. So now in this small space, you're doing your power move a lot more controlled. So not only are you doing it in a smaller space, you're also getting better at controlling your power move. All right, so we went over windmill. That's one of the exercises. Now let's check out the next one. I know this is gonna be a huge jump, but we're gonna move on to halo. So I know a lot of you guys don't have halo, or you're struggling with halo. So don't think of this as you doing that power move, or like, oh, I'm doing a halo. Break it up so it's less daunting. So instead of working on halo, you're working on a bunch of these freezes in sequence. And once you hash out the transitions between the freezes, then maybe you'll get a little bit more familiar with the move. So even if you fall on this one, go ahead and give this one a shot. For halo, let's go ahead and the main freeze, the first one is baby or side chair. So we're gonna be using side chair, which is like this right here. That's how I'm gonna be starting my halo. And the supporting freezes are, those of you that can't see it, the supporting freezes underneath are hang glide, chair, air chair, headstand, head invert, and pike. We won't be using all of these verbatim, and I'll show you where these start applying. So first is gonna be baby or side chair. It's gonna be like, let me find a better position. It's gonna be like this. This is the first position. Now, let's scoot this over into air chair, basically moving the stab further back. And then from here, from chair, air chair, push up into headstand. So now you're in headstand, open out to head invert. Those of you guys that know how to head invert or have tried it, once you're in head invert, pike your legs, and then from here, turn and catch back and hang glide. And that is essentially like a slow halo. So all together, here's what it's gonna look like. And I know this is kind of fast paced, but we'll break this down into parts. So baby or side chair, again, it's gonna be like this.
baby or side chair in this stab. Rotate your hips to air chair. Pick up to headstand. Open out to head invert. Move that arm. Move the legs and pike. Bring it back to hang glide. And then restart to baby or side chair. And then repeat that whole process. Whew. I know that was a lot of different moves to take in, but again, this is just an example of what it would be like to apply freezes into power, especially in a small space like this. Let's try doing from just chair or stab, going up to headstand, and then going back down to stab, right? So if you can stab to head, back to stab, ignoring all the details of pike, head invert, air chair, all that stuff, just stab to head freeze, back to stab. This is gonna be the most basic. So you're here, any stab, pick up to head, back to stab, right? Doesn't seem like a halo, right? But now let's try it. Those of you that can do a slight spin on your head, try a small spin on your head with your hands on the ground. Just try and walk it a little bit while you're on your head and then catch it back and stab. So it's gonna be like this. Stab, pick up to head, do a slight walk, back to stab. Those of you that are more familiar with your head freeze, maybe try taking a bigger step when you walk around. So you're in stab, pick up to head, do a bigger step, back to stab. Right? Now it's starting to look more and more like a halo, even though it may not be exactly like a halo. Just the bread and butter, just doing stab to head, back to stab, that's gonna be the basis of applying freezes to this power move. Now, let's get into the more nitty gritty. Actually, before we get to the nitty gritty, let's do one more stab to head, back to stab. So we're here in stab, picking up to head, rotating a little bit, back to stab. That's all you need. Now, everything on this list, we have hang glide, chair, air chair, headstand, head invert, pike. They're all smaller things that will help you get halo later. You don't need these in order. You can do headstand and combine it with pike. You don't need the head invert. Try doing this. So if you're just with stab, headstand, back to stab, inserting a pike with your legs in between, here's what it would look like. So you're in stab, picking up to head, moving over to pike, back to stab. Right? Adding a little bit of a spin to that headstand. You're in stab, pick up to head, pike it, spin, back to stab. Right? So all these things in here are to help you, I guess, make it look or feel or apply it to that power move. So you may not need everything in here in the supporting freezes. Again, that's why they're supporting freezes. You don't absolutely need them, but they definitely will help. So those of you guys that want to get halo, you want to get windmill, you want to get other power moves, when next time we stream and you're doing these stack combos, think about how this applies to a power move or how you would turn this into a power move. I think that's enough for the halo. Let's move on to, let's see. Shoulder halo is next on the list. So shoulder halo, I know shoulder halo is pretty daunting. It's not a move that a lot of people learn at first when they're learning the range of power moves, but let's go ahead and give this a shot. Those of you that tune into the stream, we've done shoulder freeze to headstand, and really that's all you need. And it's gonna be just like we did for halo. You did stab to headstand, back into stab. This is just gonna be replacing that stab with the shoulder. So the main freeze right here is shoulder freeze, and then the supporting freeze are headstand, head invert, and pike. The same supporting freezes that were in the halo, minus all the stabs. We're just replacing all the stabs with a shoulder, which is the main freeze. So those of you guys that want to try and follow along, now is the time. Let's get into shoulder freeze. Practice this shoulder freeze right here. And just from here, practice picking up to head, leaning onto your head. Pick up to headstand. Now, back to shoulder. And that's it.
So we already knocked out half of what we need. There are 4 freezes on this list: the shoulder, headstand, head invert, and pike. And we only have 2 of the freezes. All right, so maintaining those 2 freezes alone, shoulder freeze and headstand, all we're gonna do is add a little spin to the headstand, catch it back in the shoulder. The spin can be as big or small as you want. So let's try doing shoulder freeze.
Shoulder freeze, picking up to head, spin a little bit, back to shoulder. All right, same thing with a slightly bigger spin. Shoulder freeze, picking up to head, bigger spin, catch, shoulder. Right? Again, with an even bigger spin, shoulder freeze, headstand, spin, shoulder. Right? So you guys are seeing where this is going. All we have are 2 freezes adding a spin, and it makes learning the power move a little bit more approachable. 2 freezes, let's add in the 3rd freeze, head invert, which we didn't really get to address in the halos, but we'll address it now. So for shoulder halo, you don't absolutely need a head invert, but it helps for the slow positioning. So here's what I mean. And this kind of goes into like a short tutorial. You're gonna go shoulder, picking up to head, extend the arm, your free arm. So whatever arm was in shoulder freeze, that free arm, you're gonna go shoulder, picking up to head. Now from head, extending that free arm into a head invert, and then using that arm to pull you to rotate back into shoulder freeze. So here's what it's gonna look like. Shoulder freeze, picking up to head, head invert. Use this arm, the one with my tattoo on it, to pull and spin back into shoulder freeze. That is where the head invert comes in. Again, you don't absolutely need head invert, but what you're gonna take from it is that arm reaching over, back, pulling, catching back in shoulder. So now let's add in a pike into that position. So do a shoulder freeze, headstand, head invert, or at least reaching over with that free arm, and then try piking it as you do that reach, or maybe before you do that reach. So shoulder freeze, headstand, pike, head invert, pull, close. So now we used all 4 elements: the main freeze, the shoulder freeze, and then the 3 supporting freezes. Is this kind of clicking for you guys? How you can use your small space, or just using these freezes, whether you have the space or not, to learn power moves. Shoulder halo, let me go over it one more time. Shoulder to headstand, from headstand reaching out to head invert, which you don't absolutely need. Again, same thing with the legs. Pike, you're only using pike for the legs. So as you reach out, pike those legs over, pull, catch back in shoulder. So 4 elements: shoulder, headstand, reach over, pike with your legs, pull, and close back into shoulder freeze. So that's a way to practice your shoulder halo in a small space. Flopping everywhere, but the point is to connect all these freezes and utilize them in power moves, because like I've been saying for a long time, freezes are the foundation or the basis for power moves, footwork, top rock, everything. It's not the historical foundation, but like everything has a freeze. Everything is meant to look crisp, clean, and you using these freezes, applying them into your power move, will make them a lot more clean. After shoulder halo comes flare, which we won't really get into. Tuck planche, L-sit, handstand, right? So if you want to practice for flares, it's really hard, especially with the space I have here. But just working on tuck planche to L-sit, back to tuck planche, and then handstand. If you want to do L-sit to tuck planche to handstand, that helps too. It's just like an exercise. So L-sit to tuck planche to handstand, that's also an exercise. Or back down. So if you want to do handstand to tuck planche to L-sit,
That's also a great exercise for flares. So like I was saying before, this may not get you the power move, but also creates a good exercise for you to better your power move. So if you're looking to get better flares, this exercise creating exercises using these freezes will definitely help you in the long run. Let's move out of flare. I think flare, these are more like exercises. So tuck planche, L-sit, handstand. You can use all these differently to try and improve your flares, or at least gain the strength to do more. So after flare, there is elbow track. So this is useful. And I know elbow track, I don't think I'm gonna have everyone try and do an elbow track, but I'll show you how this applies. So elbow track, obviously you need elbow freeze on both sides, right? You're gonna be throwing off one elbow, catching on the other. I don't even know if I can elbow track in this space, but that's what this workshop is for. So you're gonna be doing one elbow freeze like this, and the other elbow freeze like this, right? That's just what we practice in our stream, right? Supporting freezes are handstand, Nike, and pike. So don't know if you'll be able to see my legs here, but as I do this elbow freeze, I'm gonna be applying Nike right here, using my pike. And if I don't do a full pike, I'm at least piking my knees or my thighs to my upper body. I'm at least piking this part up. And then catching kind of in a handstand for a little bit, but just doing elbow and then walking over to the other elbow. So like from here, walking over, or let me do the other way, from here, Nike, pike, walk over, might help me with elbow track. So if I want to apply this to like with more of a spin, I can do here, this position, and catch it, right? If you want to practice something like elbow track in your room, it is possible. I just proved it, even though it may not be the prettiest. But you're going to be taking elements from handstand, Nike, and pike. You may not be using them verbatim, but take those elements, apply it to your elbow track. You're going to need both sides elbow freeze. So this requires a lot of foundation on your elbows. So if you're looking to get elbow track, learn elbow freeze on both arms, really get that Nike down, really get that pike down, really have solid handstands. So again, just to show you, it's going to be elbow freeze Nike, you're going to kick into pike, and then catch other side elbow. All right, I think that's enough for elbow track. Was there chair flare? So not going to do a full chair flare here, but show you guys how all these kind of apply, right? So main thing for chair flare is having obviously a chair or an air chair. So if you just practice your air chair, this will be your throw off point where you throw off, right? You need tuck planche and L-sit and handstand from flare. So you have chair, main freeze, tuck planche, L-sit, handstand are from flare, and then pike, hang glide, baby, and side chair are gonna be from just particular to this chair flare. So for example, if you wanna start off in a chair flare from hang glide, you can do that. If you're doing from other power, you can apply the air chair, or you can apply straight air chair. But for example, like if I wanna do chair flare, I have to have my hang glide, my side chair, and my air chair down if I want to just work on throwing it from sitting. So if I'm in this small space right here, I want to practice throwing that chair flare, really just having that rotation from stab, from hang glide to side chair to air chair, and then push off. That's going to help me with chair flare. And then if I throw it and I try to catch it either in like a tuck planche position or a tuck planche like position or a handstand like the crazy b-boys do, you can use that as well. So for example, you're in hang glide right here and you want to kick into like a tuck planche position or something like that, right? But I'm using those elements of rotating that stab all the way through to the back, pushing, catching in a tuck planche or handstand position. But main thing is using those chair points, right? So again, you're here, rotate, and catching in handstand or tuck planche. So if I want to practice chair flare in a small space, that's kind of how I would apply all of it. So if you were to break it down slow, like we did for halo or shoulder halo or windmill, it's going to be from stab to chair to air chair. Obviously the throw is going to require a kick, unlike the other ground power we were doing, but just getting familiar with that will be half the battle. So next one is Airtrack. We're not going to go over Airtrack. Don't have space here, but if you want to do a high Airtrack, you need a handstand, Nike, pike. One hand stall is optional, but like I do in the stream, like I did handstand to Nike, but I did a rotation. That could help with Airtrack, catching on the opposite Nike. So for example, in the stream, I do handstand to Nike, but I add a rotation in between. This isn't explicitly an Airtrack, but if you have a small space, this might help. If you're doing handstand, reaching over, catching a Nike, that might help you with Airtrack, catching on that other arm, right? So like I said, this may not get you the power move per se, just by working on this alone, but this alone will help you with certain elements of power moves. So again, if I want to work on applying Airtrack in this small space, do like a handstand and then rotate and catch Nike. That was a really bad example. Handstand, rotate, catch Nike. So Airtrack, be really brief with that. Same thing with 90s. You're gonna need a handstand, and I understand a lot of people may not have the space, but just working on handstand walks, doing handstands in circles, and then doing a handstand 90, that might help you as well. Haven't done it in a while, but if I have this small space and I want to work on 90s, I would work on handstand, rotating it in a circle, and then spinning, catching, spinning, catching. So here, handstand, spinning, catching, spinning, catching. So, gonna be using Nikes, pikes in your handstand right before you kick, do a pike, all those different elements in there. So, using main freeze as handstand, supporting freezes, Nike, and pike. Same thing with 2000, but 2000 you won't be able to drill as much like 90s. And also risks you falling more, especially if you're in a small space. So if I did a 2000 and I fell, might fall on this table, something like that. So I'll skip that one. Circles. So if you want to work on circles or closed-legged flares, maybe you could actually try this. Going from tuck planche and then rotating to L-sit. Again, you may not be in exactly a planche. You may not be tucked in all the way like this. Maybe you'll start out here. And then just try, like if you have socks on, try dragging your feet to the front for an L-sit, right? So same thing right here, legs straight out. If you have socks on, drag your feet in a circle into an L-sit position. Walk it back. Same thing. Just get used to the rhythm and the feeling of your arms holding your weight off the ground. So that would be a little bit more applicable than flare. And then we get to swipes. So swipes, something else we can all do. Swipes, as you can see, I only have two freezes. The main freeze, which is handstand, and then the sporting freeze, which is Nike. So for swipes, try doing a handstand or a Nike freeze while in a handstand. So you're gonna be doing this, right? So whatever, usually the way I think about it is like whatever arm I stab with, that's the leg that's gonna be bent. So if I stab with this arm, then this leg is bent. Now for swipes, the reason why I have these two freezes here, even though it doesn't seem like they kind of fit into this mold of Powermove is because if you work on handstand and Nike, take that bent leg and then place it on the ground while lifting up the opposite hand. So the hand that's corresponding with the straight leg, lift that off the ground as you put the bent leg to the ground. So you're here, put your bent leg to the ground, lift up your arm. And that's pretty much your swipe, right? That's the start of a swipe. So handstand, lift up and put your foot down, and you're applying your Nike freeze and your handstand. And now all you have to do from that position is reach over with your arms. So handstand, Nike freeze, place that foot down, lift up that arm, place the other arm on the ground, and then get back from here into handstand. So, doing swipes in a small space. Let me know how this works out for you guys. Guys, give this a shot. Try doing handstand in a Nike in a handstand position. Place your bent leg on the ground. Lift up that opposite arm. And then that arm that's free, walk it over across from you. And then try and get back into a handstand Nike position. Next one, we just have spins left. So shoulder spin, all you need is shoulder freeze and a pike. So applying the pike legs to shoulder freeze. So if you're in shoulder freeze like this, all you'll need really is a pike like this. All right. So really that's kind of all you need. And then to get into this, and I guess I should have put Nike down there too, but all you have to do is do a shoulder freeze in Nike and then kick into a pike and maintain that shoulder freeze. Right, so if I'm in a small space like this and I want to work on shoulder spins, I don't have room to like do a spindle or a collapse or anything like that, I can do shoulder, Nike, kick this leg into pike. You see it? So Nike, shoulder freeze, use this bent leg, kick it into pike. And I do at least one spin. So there's me practicing my shoulder spin in a small space. Obviously, it's going to be harder if the floor isn't as forgiving as this one for these spins, but Icey Ice is going to be the same thing. You're going to need hand glide, side chair, air chair just for balance purposes, kick from Nike into pike, just like shoulder spin. So, Icey Ice, same thing. Right? If you're in a small space or you want to get this move down, just practice being in this open position, Nike, and then using this bent leg and kicking into pike. All right. So I can't really do a spin that well, but Icey Ice will help you with halos. You don't need a full spin or anything like that, but yeah, just working on these freezes alone will help you with Icey Ice. The more familiar you are with hang glide, side chair, baby freeze, chair, air chair, will help you with these moves to some degree. Next one is headspin. Obviously headstand, head invert, head hollow. Pretty straightforward. You're gonna be on your head the whole time. If you want to open out your arms to pull, head invert, head hollow. You're gonna use that shoulder extension if you want to reach really far, but you don't need it. That's why they're supporting freezes. All right, so backspin, we have shoulder freeze and hang glide. And we have this for the same reason as windmill. We're just gonna be using these for a go down. And I say this because for backspin, you don't need to know a back freeze, but what's more important is to know where to spin on your back. A lot of tutorials out there, but just imagine a quarter being pinched between your shoulder blades, and that's kind of where you want to spin. But I say you want shoulder freeze and you want hang glide just because the go down. So let's say I want to start a backspin and I'm like right here and I want to kick into it like this, shoulder freeze, right? Or if I'm collapsing from hang glide, I have hang glide and I want to collapse into backspin. Before I go down, shoulder freeze, right? During my collapse. So having a good shoulder freeze, having a good hang glide will help you with backspin. if you have small space, maybe just try kicking into it from here, and just try doing a small one, right? Doesn't have to be a crazy backspin or anything, but just getting used to kicking and being in that position. Really crappy backspin, but you guys get what I mean. But other than that, I covered everything. I hope I got the point across. And that is really just taking these freezes and applying it if you want to learn power, or if you want to practice power in a small space, or if you want to maintain your power if you don't have the room. So yes, I made this list like 2 weeks ago, and I'm hoping that it breaks it down enough so it doesn't seem like the power moves, if you're learning them, are as daunting, or if you're just practicing in a small space, that's like, oh, like I can't do big power moves, or I can't work on my power because I only have this small space. You can work on your power if you have a small space. You just have to be a little bit more careful about it, and that's kind of what this workshop is about. Yeah, pretty much the crux of this workshop is, if you have these freezes, these basic freezes, you don't need a whole extensive list to work on applying them to power moves. But what's more important is that you're intentionally working on them with the sake of getting better at power moves. So if you have shoulder to head, back to shoulder, it will help you with shoulder halo. Then adding a small spin in your headstand, small things like that. And then once you get head invert, once you get pike freeze, then you can start adding those in and making it a lot better as far as applying it to your power, making it more power move-like, if you will. But if you have a small space, or if you're just trying to learn power moves from a less daunting perspective, I think this will help you out a lot. So let me know what you guys think in the comments or in the chat. Feel free to hit me up on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook Messenger, doesn't matter. Would love to see your feedback, see your progress, your footage, and the improvements out there. If you guys get anything out of this, please let me know. All right, but if there's nothing else, I'll give you time back. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning into this workshop. I really hope you guys take something out of it. And let me know on my Instagram, or on YouTube, or on Twitch. Let me know how you guys are doing with these. So if anything, I will see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. on Twitch. All right, I'll see you guys then. Peace.